what if we,
The problem is the disconnection, the short video you saw about what's
yeah,
happening in
okay.
the world and in our lives, what happened to us from when we were babies until we grew up, and what's
Okay.
happening in the world, that's the problem.
Okay.
If I had to give one name for this problem, I would call it the disconnection,
Okay.
because I feel that on this planet, people are disconnected from themselves and others, which is why in this program, I'm telling you that we're going to rewire ourselves, our relationships to ourselves and others, because I feel that the biggest problem we have is disconnection. So that's why I'm showing you the root of the problem to me is the false self. And we're going to look at what that means. What is this, the false self exactly? There's a hint right here. The false self is the nice mask that we're projecting on the world and we're hiding behind. So we're going to start here. And I'm assuming that most of you don't remember what it was to be a baby like this. I don't remember myself when I was a baby. I don't have memories of that. I have memories of myself as a toddler, but not that young, not a young baby, not even able to walk, you know. But if you look at that baby, or if you think of the babies that you've met in your life, maybe you have children or there are babies around you. Well, you can look at this one, because he's what we see when we look at a baby. And what we see is pure innocence, pure energy. There's no masks there, there's no pretending. And I really believe that's one of the reasons we like small children and babies so much. It's because they're so pure and it's so true. We know they're not hiding anything, right? I've met people in my life who told me that they weren't emotional people. And my answer to them was there's no such thing. We were all born as feeling beings. There's no baby who's holding back their emotions, right? There's not one baby on the planet who's thinking, if I'm crying right now, what are they going to think of me if I express myself? What are people going to think about me? There's not a baby in the world who's thinking that. They feel something, they express it. They're wet, they're hungry. They'll let you know. So that's pure energy. And this is the way life started for all of us. Can you see that? Because maybe you haven't thought for a while that you were a baby before and what you looked like. Can you connect to that energy that you were and that's still inside of you? Because that's your real self, that's your pure self. So that's you before you learned not to be so open. That's you before you formed all those beliefs because of the things that happened to you. And that baby grew up and became a toddler running around, happily running around, bumping into things, breaking stuff, climbing on the furniture, falling down, wanting to be a part of everything, getting himself into danger at times, right? You have to be really careful when you have a toddler around because they're really fast. Like that mother running behind the kid trying to, catch him. And Some of us at that age were either neglected or abused or both. But even if you had good parents, you started to receive different messages about the things you were doing, right? Maybe your parents were tired because they weren't sleeping enough. They weren't as patient with you as you deserved. And let's face it, I don't think on this planet we know how to raise a child without shaming it. So they learn how to behave in society. Shame is a big part of a lot of people, so is guilt. And it comes from sometimes just the boundaries and the limits that the adults around us were placing on us. Sometimes gently, but sometimes not so gently. And we kind of recorded an unconscious message of, if I do this, people get angry. So we start holding back even at that age. We start a bit to hold back our natural impulses because, especially if people react badly around us. So already we've lost a bit of the innocence and the pureness that we had, the purity that we had. Does that make sense to you? Yes. And then we grew up a bit more. And then we discover the many faces of rejection because we start school and then we meet other children. We meet a classroom and a teacher, and we really begin to sense society's rule inside of those classrooms. We learn that there are behaviors that are encouraged and other that are punished, and not always very gently. And that's really hurtful to a small child, to learn that what I would like to do, what I would like to say is not okay here. If I say that, if I do that, I'm going to be punished. And sometimes those punishments are not that obvious. Sometimes it's just a look that you receive. Someone is sighing, or someone just, you can just feel an impatient energy about them, but you still get the message that all of you is not okay. And you have to obey the rules and you have to fall in line and behave like the others do to get the rewards and to avoid the punishments. And you start learning that asking too many questions is not necessarily welcome, and laughing too loudly is not necessarily welcome all the time, or just dancing around the room and annoying people because you are moving so much air in the room, you know. Is what I'm saying making sense to you? I'd like to just take a moment to get some of your feedback.
Totally makes sense.
Yes,
Yeah, it sounds familiar.
it sounds familiar. I think we all went through this because not all of us were abused, but we all had to follow the rules, and sometimes those rules had nothing to do with who we really were. We had to follow the rules. It wasn't a choice. And that gradually, imagine every time you have an impulsion to do something and someone stops you and you receive a negative message, you can't, this part of you kind of dies and it stops growing. And when you become an adult, at one point you kind of look like this because you're kind of fragmented, right? Every time you have a shock in your life, every time you were hurt and nobody was there to help you through that hurt, a part of you stopped. Inside of us, we are fragmented. We have different pieces at different ages. Every time we had a shock, that part kind of stopped, as I'm saying. And we have learned so many beliefs about who we are, what we're allowed to do, what we're allowed to say, what we're allowed to feel even. And that's inside of us. We are 1,000 pieces inside, 1,000,000 pieces inside. All the things that you are, that someone taught you to believe it wasn't right. Like maybe you wanted to sing and someone thought that this was too loud. And instead of understanding that it was just this moment that you were too loud, it didn't mean that you had to never speak or sing again. Sometimes we receive those messages really, really strongly, and we create beliefs around them. But under the mask, and that's one thing I'm talking about the mask, but we kind of learn to create a new personality because we receive the message that the person that we really are is not acceptable, not all of it anyway. So we kind of create a persona that's designed to please others, to avoid being punished. And we're kind of placing that persona between us and the world, and we're hiding behind. But as the years go by, we start believing that that persona that we created ourselves is who we really are, and we disconnect from what's behind it. But that's something that's very painful because you're pushing down or you're pushing away the parts of you that are trying to express themselves and to have a life and to be seen and heard and loved. And you've been pushing them down for so long that sometimes you don't even realize that they're there anymore. But there is so much suffering on this planet, so much loneliness. People can have many friends and family and be surrounded by people, but I'm always surprised how much loneliness people experience anyway. Because a lot of people don't feel that they have the right to really show others who they really are, what they're feeling, what they're thinking. Instead, we kind of learn to respond to the expectations of others. And we forget sometimes that we're even here, especially when there are people around us. But under the mask, most people are suffering. And that leads to every disconnections that you see around you. And we get very invested into that mask because that mask is very fragile, right? This is the ego. And the ego is really fragile because it doesn't have a real existence. It's not alive. It's something that we created to protect ourselves. So it's very weak and it's going to perceive often that it's attacked. Every time someone doesn't believe the mask that we are projecting, we are feeling the attack. But people are not even attacking us, but what they're interacting with is just this persona that we created. But we feel that they're attacking us because we believe that this is us, right? So we'll be talking more about that, especially in the self-connection course. But I wanted to tell you a bit about that today because I want you to understand how we are constructed, what we are dealing with, and what we need to do to connect back to ourselves. There's that mask right now that you're invested in. And you have to pull away from that very gently. Understand why you created the mask, every parts of it, and just de-identify with it and come back to yourself, which is what we're going to do. But this is the new normal. People together, each with their phone or their lives, not really connecting. Most people are not really connected to themselves and they're not really able to connect to others. So we have to fill the void because that's really painful. Not to be connected to our real self is really painful. And we have to fill the void that that creates. So dopamine is a problem in our world. Scrolling endlessly, drinking, any substance abuse, food even, watching TV, I don't know, whatever. We're filling our lives with things that we don't really need, that will never fulfill us because we have that void inside. So most of the problems you may be having in your life right now is because of something that you put in place to fill that void. But as I was saying, we'll talk about that a bit more. But that's the new normal. Everybody super connected to everybody else with technology, but completely disconnected on the human emotional level. And this brings us to the state of the world, because the world is just a reflection of 8 billion people who are disconnected from themselves. And we all are on some level. Some people are really, really disconnected. Some people are just a bit disconnected, but nobody is fully connected on our planet. I have never met someone who's fully connected. But you can see how that creates the needs for having money and power and control and influence, and how those needs can bring about the world that we see around us, all the violence. We're all fighting from this emptiness. But luckily, there's a way back. And the way back in our community is called a journey, right? So the part of you that you have hidden from the world and even from yourself, it's possible to connect back to it. There's a path to connect back to it. And the path is the journey. So the mask that you put up, there's no need to fight it. There's no need to struggle with it. There's no need to try to get rid of it. And in fact, if you try getting rid of it, you're still trying to get rid of a part of yourself. And the ego always fights back. When we try to amputate a part of ourselves, that part always fights back. So the idea here is not to try to get rid of anything, but to meet all those parts of you and to reintegrate them. Not exactly as they're showing up right now, but you're going to reintegrate them transformed by the work that we're going to do.